All right, let's go. The radio in your hand is still warm from the last guy's grip, and the hill above you is already moving motorcycles. A woman with a gas canister, two kids who go quiet the moment they see you, and nobody told you to stand here. You just understood, the way you understand which seat at a table is yours without anyone pointing. The lookout. Specific historical event São Paulo, Complexo do Alemão adjacent operations, 2006. The morning of February 9th, 2006, starts the way every morning starts. You are at your post by 6, the light is gray and low, and the only sound is the water truck making its Wednesday run up the switchback. Routine is the whole architecture of the job. The 7 a.m. police patrol, the bakery delivery at 9, the same 4 faces at the Boca by 10. You log none of it because logging it would make it evidence, and the discipline of not writing things down is the first thing anyone teaches you. What wasn't routine? A white gal with city government plates that came up the access road at 6:47 and stopped for 40 seconds in front of a wall with no reason to stop in front of a wall. 40 seconds, you counted. What you see in the next hour is the information traveling upward, not dramatically, not with phones or radios, but through a relay of gestures so practiced they look like nothing. A nod to a boy on a bicycle. The boy rides. 3 minutes later, a man you've never met leans out of a window on the 3rd floor of a building to your left and looks at the white car's direction, not at the car, and then goes back inside. The man in that window is a regional coordinator affiliated with a faction that, by 2006, had developed what a later federal police intelligence brief described as the most structurally sophisticated interior communication system documented in a Brazilian urban criminal network. His name appears in that brief as a subject. His face is never photographed. You don't know his name, you know the window. The white car, it will later emerge through a municipal inquiry, belonged to a utilities inspector conducting a legitimate survey of water infrastructure. He stopped because he dropped his clipboard. And 40 people adjusted their positions. The official record for February 9th shows no incidents in the area. The utilities survey was completed and filed. The water infrastructure report was submitted to the municipal secretariat on schedule. What people who worked that hill reported: that the 40-second stop triggered a lockdown protocol that lasted until noon, that 4 packages were relocated to alternate storage points during that window, and that the man in the 3rd floor window was on a call to a counterpart in another complex within 90 seconds of the car stopping. The official record contains the water report. It does not contain the 90 seconds. The matter was resolved without incident. No law enforcement action was initiated. The utilities survey generated no secondary referrals. The day was logged as uneventful by the 38th Battalion's operational record. What the record left out: the relocation of the 4 packages during the lockdown window required a route through a community health clinic supply corridor, whose staff were not affiliated with the faction and were not informed of the transit. The clinic director filed no complaint. No complaint was filed because no one who worked in that clinic saw anything they could describe as a specific act. But the official record is accurate in what it documents. Nothing happened that day. No crime was witnessed. No complainant came forward. The one detail it cannot close: the communication relay that responded to a clipboard being dropped from you, to the bicycle boy, to the 3rd floor window, to the counterpart in the adjacent complex, completed its full circuit in under 4 minutes, without a single electronic transmission, in a network that the federal police had been attempting to map for 3 years. They were mapping it with technology. It ran on eye contact. The street distributor. Daily life inside the syndicate. 8 months later, you are not watching, you are selling. The vapor position is described in academic literature on Brazilian criminal organizations as the most exposed tier of the distribution hierarchy. What that means in the body: you stand in a specific spot for a specific number of hours, and every transaction happens in the open air, and the only thing between you and a bad outcome is the reputation of the organization above you, which is invisible, and the lookouts below you, which is you, 6 months ago. The product is not yours. The money is not yours. Your cut is fixed, 8%, held back before the night's count goes to the gerent, and the count is checked twice, which means the arithmetic of your exposure is precise in both directions. You know exactly what you earn, and you know exactly what happens if the count is short. The gerent above you is a man named Serginho, 26, who has been running this boca for 4 years and who keeps his ledger in a red spiral notebook and double-checks every figure before he passes it up. Serginho wears the same blue polo shirt 4 days out of 5. He has a daughter. He shows you her photo once, not to be friendly, but because he is explaining something. Everything I do so she doesn't have to. He puts the photo away. The conversation is over. What Serginho also runs, which does not appear in any criminological study you have read: a dispute resolution function. When two families in the community have a conflict, a debt, a boundary, a theft, they come to Serginho before they go anywhere else, because Serginho's resolution sticks and the alternative resolutions available to them are slow and partial and require bus fare to a courthouse in a district that has never shown much interest in them. He is a court. He is an accountant. He sells drugs. All three are true at the same time, and none of them cancel the others out. What the Observatorio das Favelas documented in its 2007 report on informal governance in Rio's northern complexes: that dispute resolution functions performed by faction-affiliated individuals represented the primary conflict mediation mechanism for an estimated 60% of residents in areas under factional territorial control, with resolution rates, meaning the conflict did not re-escalate, that exceeded those of formal judicial mediation in the same socioeconomic bracket. What Serginho reported, in the way that Serginho reported things, which was not to researchers but in the normal course of a Tuesday: the court takes 6 months, I take 20 minutes, and I'm here tomorrow. The official record of the dispute resolution function: it does not exist. Informal adjudication by criminal actors is not a category that generates documentation. The BOCA operated continuously throughout the period in question. No formal investigation into its dispute resolution activities was initiated. The activity generated no evidentiary record accessible to law enforcement. What the record left out: that 3 formal complaints filed with the local civil police precinct during this same period were withdrawn by complainants within 72 hours of filing, and that in each case the underlying dispute had been resolved. The complainants said, when asked, "between us, privately." Privately means Serginho. And yet the formal justice system's limitations in high-density, informal settlements are documented, structural, and not caused by Serginho. They predate him. They will outlast him. The one detail that cannot close: when Serginho was eventually arrested in 2009, and the BOCA went through 3 gerents in 8 months, each one less established, each one less capable of the dispute function. The number of violent altercations in the immediate community in those 8 months was 4 times the annual average of the preceding 3 years. The variable was Serginho. The replacement of Serginho with law enforcement did not replace Serginho. You've been in this thing for 2 segments, and you already know more about how it actually worked than most of what gets written about it. That's the point. Stay with it. What comes next is the room where the real decisions happened, and you're going to be inside it. The Lieutenant. A famous figure's defining moment, told from inside it. The room is a visiting area in a São Paulo state penitentiary, and the year is 2003, and the man across the table from you has been incarcerated for 4 years and is, by any structural measure, the most consequential single actor in Brazilian organized crime of the preceding decade. His name is Marcos Williams Herbas Camacho. Everyone in this room calls him Marcola. He is 33. He has the manner of a man who has decided, sometime in the past several years, that impatience is a resource he cannot afford to spend. He speaks quietly. He finishes sentences. You are here because you run the exterior operation for the São Paulo node of the Primeiro Comando de Capital, the PCC. And Marcola needs to tell you something that cannot travel through the relay system because it is too structural, too consequential, to be trusted to 3 sets of hands and a timetable. What he tells you, the sintonia system, the PCC's internal disciplinary and communication hierarchy, is being formalized, not changed, formalized. What existed as understood practice is being made explicit, which means it is being made enforceable, which means the men below you are now accountable to a structure rather than to a personality, and that structure will outlast any personality, including Marcola's. He says this without pride. He says it the way a civil engineer describes load-bearing walls. The sintonia formalization, as it would be reconstructed in hundreds of pages of federal police and GAECO wiretap transcripts over the following decade, divided the PCC's operations into distinct functional domains: finance, discipline, communications, external relations, each with its own chain of accountability running upward to the Torah, the tower, which is Marcola's designation for the apex of the structure. What Marcola tells you specifically is that the finance domain and the discipline domain are being separated. Previously, the man who controlled money also controlled enforcement. Now they are different men. He explains why. When one person holds both, he becomes the organization. The organization cannot become one person. He is describing a constitutional principle. He is doing it in a prison visiting room in São Paulo. He has been in a cell for 4 years. The official record of PCC's organizational evolution during this period, as assembled by GAECO across multiple operations, that the formalization of the sintonia structure represented a qualitative shift from a gang model to what investigators described in internal briefings as a corporate criminal enterprise, with sufficient structural redundancy that the removal of any individual, including Marcola, would not disrupt the organization's core functions. What people who were inside the structure reported, that the separation of finance and discipline functions was specifically designed in response to an incident 2 years prior in which a regional sintonia leader had used his financial control to cover a personal debt through organizational funds, and that the formalization was Marcola's solution to a corruption problem that is identical, structurally, to the problem that causes municipal governments to separate their controllers from their police chiefs. The official record calls it criminal escalation. The structural logic calls it institutional reform. Both descriptions are accurate, neither is complete. The organizational restructuring was implemented over the following 24 months through the existing relay communication network. No formal charter was issued. No document bearing the structure's terms was ever recovered in its complete form. Reconstructions exist in court records as composites of wiretap fragments and cooperating witness testimony. What the record left out, that the separation of the finance function created, within 3 years, a Caixinha system, a communal fund, that by the mid-2000s was providing legal defense costs for incarcerated members at a scale that outpaced the public defender capacity for the same demographic in the same geographic areas. The state's public defenders documented the gap. They did not document the fund filling it. But the GAECO analysis of the PCC as a structured criminal enterprise was operationally correct and led to the single most significant mass arrest in the organization's history. In 2006, which disrupted its operations for a documented period of 14 months. The one detail it cannot close. During those 14 months of documented disruption, São Paulo's homicide rate, which had been declining since 2001, coinciding with the PCC's territorial consolidation, plateaued, and in 3 specific districts where the PCC's authority had been most completely displaced, briefly rose. The rate resumed its decline when the organizational structure restabilized. The correlation is documented, the causation is contested, the number is not. The enforcer. Decision point before something irreversible. This is the part where the register changes, not because the story changes, because you do. You are in the passenger seat of a Fiat Palio in Porto Alegre, and it is a Thursday in 2008, and the man driving is called Gabriel, and he is eating a sandwich, and the address you are going to is 7 minutes away, and you know what is going to happen at the address. You were not asked, you were assigned. The 11 minutes between here and there, 6 remain now, are the actual event, not what happens at the address. This, the dashboard. The sandwich. The way Gabriel drives with 2 fingers on the wheel, because he has driven to addresses like this one enough times that the weight of it no longer changes how he holds the wheel, and you are watching his hands because you are trying to understand how a person gets from where you are to where his hands are. The man at the address collected for the organization for 8 months. He stole from the collection. Not flagrantly, at a consistent rate, small enough per cycle that it read as variance until Pitbull's accountant ran the 18-month aggregate, and the variance became a pattern, and the pattern became a decision, and the decision became this car. He bought a motorcycle. That's what surfaced it. A motorcycle worth more than his visible income, purchased from a dealer connected 3 removes out to the organization's supply chain, and the information traveled the way information always travels in this structure, sideways first, then up, then back down as an instruction. You are the instruction. And you are sitting in this car for 5 more minutes thinking not about what you are going to do but about the motorcycle. What kind of person, having made the decision to steal, marks himself with a purchase? The answer is, a person who believed the distance between him and the accountability was greater than it was. He miscalculated the network. He treated it as slower than it is. You are the speed of it. That is what you are in this car. What a cooperating witness in a subsequent federal police inquiry described about the organization's enforcement mechanisms at this tier. That decisions of this nature required sign-off from 2 separate sintonia levels, finance and discipline, before authorization was granted, and that the 2-sign requirement was specifically designed to prevent personal grievances from being processed as organizational decisions. 2 signatures for what happens at the end of this drive. What people who worked adjacent to the structure reported, that the 2-signature system was also a record, not a written one, but a distributed one, held in the bodies of the 2 men who authorized it, which meant that the accountability for what happened at the address was structural, not individual, and that this was precisely the point. The system made everyone responsible. The system made no one prosecutable. The matter was resolved through organizational enforcement procedures consistent with internal practice. A missing persons report was filed 11 days later. The investigation was opened and suspended after 14 months for insufficient evidence. No suspects were identified. What the record left out, the cooperating witness's description of the 2-signature authorization system was specific enough that investigators identified, by inference, the 2 individuals whose authorization would have been required. Both were known to the federal police through prior investigations. Neither was charged in connection with the matter. The inference was not sufficient for an evidentiary threshold. And yet the investigative inference was accurate in its methodology. The federal police's structural mapping of the PCC's interior authorization processes during this period is the most detailed such document produced by any South American law enforcement body about any South American criminal organization. The one detail it cannot close. The document maps the authorization structure with precision. It does not, because it cannot map the 7 minutes in a car that precede the authorization's execution, the space where a person understands what they have become by measuring the distance between themselves and a man who holds the wheel with 2 fingers. The map has no room for this. The map is accurate. These things are both true. You're still here. That means something. The next segment is where the money stops being cash and starts being architecture, and that's when you understand that what you've been watching isn't a crime story. It's an institutional one. Stay. The financier. Daily life at the apex. The last room looks like a law office because it is a law office. You are 40 years old. You have not touched product in 12 years. You carry a phone that is replaced every 3 weeks, and you attend meetings that are scheduled through a legal entity whose registered purpose is commercial real estate advisory, and whose clients include several individuals whose names appear in separate federal police inquiries as persons of interest in matters unrelated to commercial real estate. The attorney across from you is explaining the structure of a holding vehicle, a Uruguayan entity, a Liechtenstein correspondent, a beneficial owner at a jurisdictional remove sufficient to satisfy the Brazilian Financial Intelligence Unit's disclosure threshold, and you are listening with the attention of a person for whom this information is load-bearing. The job at this level, as it actually functions, is translation. The money that moves below you, counted in red notebooks, passed up through gerents and subchefs and regional coordinators, arrives at this tier as a problem of category. It is in the wrong category and needs to be in a different one. The attorney is a machine for changing categories. You are the person who brings him the raw material and specifies the output. You do not write this down, you carry it. What Dario, the man you replaced in this role, who trained you for 8 months before retiring to a city in the interior that you have never visited and will never visit, told you about the discipline of not writing things down. Paper has weight in courtrooms. Your memory has weight nowhere. The specific innovation of the financial tier, as it operated during the period you manage it, is the use of legitimate business activity as a timing mechanism rather than a concealment mechanism. The properties are real. The transactions are real. The documentation is real. What is not real is the source of the capital that initiates them. And by the time any investigator reaches that question, the capital has passed through enough real activity that the question of its origin requires a reconstruction that is, in the attorney's careful phrase, resource-intensive to pursue. Resource-intensive, that is the whole of the mode. COAF, Brazil's Financial Intelligence Unit, documented in its 2012 annual typological report, a pattern of real estate investment vehicles structured through Uruguayan holding entities whose capital flows, when mapped against the declared income profiles of their beneficial owners, showed inconsistencies that the report classified as potentially indicative of proceeds integration. Potentially indicative is not a charge. It is a signal that requires a human investigator with jurisdictional reach, bilateral cooperation agreements, and sufficient caseload space to act. What the attorney understood, which he communicated through the structure of every vehicle he designed, that the average time between a COAF flag and an actionable investigative lead in this period was between 22 and 38 months, depending on interagency coordination and the specific jurisdictions involved. He designed for 38. The vehicles were constructed in compliance with applicable law in their jurisdictions of registration. The beneficial ownership disclosures satisfied the formal requirements of the relevant registries. Several properties were subsequently identified in a 2015 joint Brazilian-Uruguayan judicial assistance operation. 3. Resulted in formal proceedings. What the record left out. The 14 that did not result in proceedings remain in administrative suspension. The buildings are still there. They generate rental income. The income flows through the same holding structure to a beneficial owner whose identity has not been established to the evidentiary standard required for criminal proceedings. The buildings are full, people live in them. But the 2015 operation was genuine and consequential, and the bilateral framework it established has been cited by Europol as a model for international asset tracing cooperation. The one detail it cannot close. In the month following the operation's public announcement, the attorney's firm opened a corresponding relationship with a firm in a jurisdiction whose beneficial ownership disclosure standard is stricter than Liechtenstein's, which means the new structure is not a concealment. It is, on paper, more transparent than the old one. It is more transparent in a way that is harder to trace. The 40 Reis lookout on the Hill in 2006 and the man in the law office in 2018 are connected by a continuous institutional logic that learned, at every stage, from the pressure applied to the stage before it. You are that logic. You are the accumulated lesson of every interdiction that failed to reach the next tier up. You are not a criminal anymore in the way that word conjures. You are a system. Systems don't get arrested. You started with a warm radio and a hill you didn't choose, and a set of instructions so simple they fit in one sentence. You end with a law office and a glass of water, and a man who designs structures that comply with every applicable rule, and produce an outcome that every applicable rule was written to prevent. The distance between those two rooms is not a moral distance. It is a pedagogical one. Each room taught you what you needed to survive the next room. Each tier prepared you for the pressure of the one above it by making you carry more in your body and commit less to paper. By the time you reach the law office, the paper trail ends with you. Everything above it is architecture. Everything below it is people. You were the people. Now you are the architecture. The hill is still there. Another 19-year-old is on it with a radio, counting seconds in front of a stopped car, not knowing what the radio connects to. He'll find out. They always find out. If you want more videos like this, subscribe.